Hello, St. Vincent. Hello, Caribbean. Hello, Diaspora. I'm very excited today because Page Turners Plus presents a special interview with Leone Ross, the author of This One Sky Day, which was the last book that we reviewed. Leone Ross is a novelist, short story writer, editor, copy editor, reviewer, and teaches fiction writing. She's the author of 3 novels and 1 short story collection, and her short fiction and essays have been widely anthologized. She was born in England, grew up in Jamaica, and was educated at the University of the West Indies and City University in London, where she now lives. To learn more about her, you can go to her website, leoneross.com. Today, I'm also here with Paula in St. Vincent and Kessoa in London. Ever since I've read the book, I've been describing it as your love letter to the Caribbean. And so we all agree that your book suggests a deep love for Caribbean people. And one of the things we'd like to know is this a love story that you wrote for Caribbean people to fall in love with themselves? Or a story to make other people fall in love with Caribbean people?
I mean, I think I wish I kind of I could just slickly say, yes, it's one or the other. I don't necessarily know that my imagination or my intentions work so consciously, particularly not with ideas. Like I can't believe the pussy's now digging up the place. I'm going to ignore it. Do excuse me. I think what happens to me, and maybe this is a perspective that other people have on writers. Some writers, of course, say, this is the thing I intend. These are the themes I have in my mind. This is the thing I'm passionate about that I want to express. So now I'm going to create a story that helps that. But I don't approach it that way. Mm. I begin to write often from a space of emotion, an emotion usually that I'm interested in, or it could be an image that I find intriguing, or even a texture that I want to talk about. And so themes, things like, am I writing a love story for the Caribbean? Am I writing a love letter for ourselves? Or am I encouraging people to come love us? Those things occur to me much later, and in some way maybe an area that readers are more qualified to talk about. I don't mind, to answer the question, I don't mind how it's interpreted. I love the Caribbean. It has nurtured and screwed me up in complex and wonderful and, irreplaceable ways. And I'm so glad. I cannot tell you how I watched all of your conversation that you had before about the book. And at first I wasn't going to watch it because that feeling that you kind of at a door listening to other people chat you, and people should be allowed, a chance to say what they feel, right? And you shouldn't be in the business, right? But I did in the end listen to it. And I tell you the thing that did occur to me as I was listening, which I think is relevant to the question. I fell in love with all of you. Because I thought, yes, this is the way that this book is to be interpreted. This is the way the book is to be understood. A lot of people love this book, which is a blessing. But a lot of people who are, let's say, not Caribbean find it very unfamiliar, very weird, very something that they delight in but don't relate to. And it seemed to me that you guys reassured me again that Caribbean people will experience it on a different level, will recognize it, will not perhaps think it's as weird as other people think it is. So that's kind of a long and maybe all around the place way of saying, if people experience it as a love letter, sure, that's what I intended. If you experience it as me saying to you, you feel love yourself a little more, this is what I intended to do. Lovely. All interpretations are valid in this context. I don't know if that's a helpful answer at all, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
No, that's a great answer. I really like that. I think that it's however you want to take it. I'm going to jump in with another question because I think it actually rolls on from what you just said, Leone. Which is, you said that people found it, if they weren't from the Caribbean, they found it kind of weird. It didn't fit with their idea, perhaps, of what the Caribbean is, or they're not used to what I would think of as kind of magical realism in that kind of context. but they have got their own idea of the Caribbean, and it doesn't fit with the magic that I think those of us who love the Caribbean know it to be as a space. And so the question is, how much did you draw on existing Caribbean mythology to create the world of Poppy Show, or did it inspire it, even if it doesn't always appear in ways that we're familiar with?
I mean, I think this again, you see, I'm being the difficult person who's being interviewed. It's not. This book has come out of a whole. I feel like I said everything I knew about the Caribbean in one book, and yet added things that have nothing to do with the Caribbean and everything to do with my own imagination and my sense of globalism. So I don't know that there are explicit connections in that I didn't pick up a book or several books and go, okay, I wanna pick up this mythology or that mythology. I tell you where I did start with, though, that sense of, you know, when your auntie wake up in the morning and she drinks some chocolate tea and she tell you, say, your grandfather did come talk to her last night, and nobody of course not. Why would you, right? Nobody worried about, you know, auntie look like she losing her marbles, and nobody thinks about it that way. They go, and you know, or even say what granny did say, you know, or whatever. But the ease with which we have a relationship with what is possible and what is impossible. Also, you know, more than anything, our sense of the ridiculous. That is what I think I would like to think comes through in this novel. Our sense of humor. We're so extreme. We're very enough, you know, like everything has to be big. Every response is
over dramatic.
We don't know our effects on other people, right? People are like, you know, when I first kind of came as an adult to Europe, I used to go back and forth, long story, but as an adult, when I returned to England, it was that sense of you know, we use our hands and we really passionate, and the way that, you know, I would take European or English friends to my family and they would sit there patiently waiting to get into the conversation. I know you like already, right? I'm like, one of my friends was really extroverted, and like he used to come to my family house and be really quiet. And at one point I said to him, "You all right? Like, you feel comfortable? You okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm just waiting for a pause in the conversation."
That's never coming.
Flamboyances are normal.
Jump in. And like, he used to get like distressed on our behalf, like when people are having debates. And you know that thing, I don't know, like, can I swear? I can't swear, can I?
You can swear, it's fine.
No.
Sorry.
I'm not. I don't think so. It's gonna be.
I won't swear. Complicate the matter. I can hear my mother saying, "What? Where?" Ask them if you can swear from. Stop. You know that point in the domino game where you're fling down the domino, right? And you say B, C, and D, right? And like you're in the middle of a political debate, and you're like, "That's a Ifri, that's a Ifri, that's a Ifri." Like, I'd have my friends getting really worried that now, like, the whole family had broken down, and because, you know, they were swearing at each other.
Yeah.
That's love, you know. So like, I'm aware that I'm not really answering any of these questions, but I think it feels to me like what has happened here thematically is, on one level, buck up, if that makes any sense. I didn't approach this narrative with any agenda. I approached this narrative with a promise to myself about authenticity and concern with quality of language and wanting to express a series, I suppose, of emotional ideas. Anything else that has come out of it, an acknowledgement, whether it be an acknowledgement of mythology or a love letter to the Caribbean or any other themes of collectivity or anything else that you guys pick up on, that came later. That was unconscious. They're only when I got into the edit did I go, oh, it looks like I'm dealing with this theme or that theme. So it's my clumsy way of saying, often I think writers are questioned in this way, like we sat down and decided this will be the theme, and then I'll do it this way. And increasingly, I don't approach the creative space in such a cynical way, almost, or even in a narrative way. I allow what are clearly my concerns and clearly my themes to kind of bubble up under the surface, my first concern is with character.
I
don't think any of these answers are
Leone, you say it's buckle, but I think it's simply that that the novel shows up your philosophical assumptions. You know, I think it's simple as that. It's as simple as that. These are my this is the way I live. These are my convictions.
Yeah, these are the things I feel. Yes.
And these just come out.
And they come out, absolutely so. What I'm saying is that it didn't start off, and so I find myself almost unable or certainly ineffective when asked to think about it as like this, as if the horse comes before the cart. It's like,
right.
I didn't think about it like that. So the rest is, I suppose I'm saying buck up, but you're absolutely right. Of course, your passions, your, as you say, your philosophies, your way of thinking about the world, of course, come up and become evident. And then, of course, you organize these things later on. I'm not saying this is like happened by magic. Of course not.
I mean, it's a Caribbean novel. It could, huh?
I could pretend. I could say, yeah, man, whenever, yeah, but that wouldn't be.
All right, on the theme of a Caribbean novel, I was very excited. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Francine? Let me just
sorry, I just wanted to kind of put a little bow on that. When Leone said, she did all this and then the stuff bubbled up, I started thinking, yes, it's like, the whole is more than the sum of the parts. And to put it in more of a Caribbean way, it's like a pot of oil down, or, those one pot meals where you put all the ingredients and then it bubbles up and then you have this amazing magical thing. So
yes, and then it becomes evident what it is in the eating.
Oil down.
Yeah, it becomes evident what it is in the eating.
Exactly.
I love that.
Right.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, and then of course you may continue the analogy.
Over to you.
You may then, to continue the analogy, you may then attend to your table setting, putting out the thing on. You may become conscious of who is at your table and how you will serve them and so on, and what the needs are of, if we think of the consumer as the reader. Of course, you think of those things, but as you say, the magic and the bubble down and the all of the textures and flavors doing their thing has to happen first.
Well, I wanted to ask you about, I live in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I was very excited when I saw an interview with you and you said that it's essentially, you didn't use these words, but you said that you were channeling the Grenadines. So I wanted to know what your relationship with the Grenadines is, and why you thought the Grenadines were a good setting for this one Sky Day.
Well, I mean, some of this is memory. And because I was talking before about trusting instincts and trusting feelings, I spent a very short period, I don't think more than 4 or 5 months, in Grenada, in St. George's, just after the revolution. Because my mother was working as part of the then revolutionary government. And she was working in developing a television station, I think. And I was about 11, maybe. I'd have to do the math, 11, 12. And I went to school there for a little while, and I was asked to leave because I misbehaved. And I spent quite a lot of time on the beach. So I remember the contrast for me between my spatial understanding of Kingston, which is where I'd lived before, and a smaller space like St. George's, and this feeling. And then we kept jumping off, I think, several times into smaller islands as well. So that sense that I'd never had in Jamaica, which is, Jamaica is Jamaica. It has its relationships with various parishes, and of course Kingston is a hub. But this idea of both a smaller island and then a smaller island with smaller islands off it, I remember it took a lot of my imagination at the time. I'm not quite sure why. I think I spent a lot of time in that sea, a lot of time in that sea. And I think there was a period in which my mother didn't quite know what to do with me. I shouldn't say that, but anyway. So she just, and I was always a beach girl and always loved the sea, and loved the waves, and so I spent a good few weeks just literally at the beach. Like I'd get up in the morning and just go down to the beach and stay there and ride the waves and do that, right? And then I think she thought I was getting a bit wild, so she'd sent me back to Jamaica. But that period of being so close to the sea.
Yeah.
And almost like becoming this little sea creature. Like I was burned to a crisp, 10 million, shades darker than I am now, believe me. And feeling like increasingly aquatic, and it's a period in my life. And of course, there was so much happening in Grenada at the time.
Mm-hmm.
There were periods in which I was frightened, So it's something that I've held on to, both this spatial sense of something smaller with its attendant islands, what it is to live really in kind of archipelago. And so when I was working on this, it's like, it may feel in many ways very Jamaican, but it's not spatially, it's Grenadine.
Well, spatially, it's definitely the Grenadines, because I felt it.
Yeah. And I know, you said so. And I was so delighted to do that. And in the end, actually, when I was doing the kind of research, which for me was not so much going to the books, but I needed a spatial sense. If I'd had the money at the time, Paula, I would have gone back to Grenada.
If you didn't know me, you could have come and stay with me.
Never had the money at the time, money to just run off to the Grenadines for like 2 weeks. So then I went, I don't know if you heard this, I don't know if it was an interview.
I did hear that. Mm-hmm.
I went to the Isles of Scilly, which is an archipelago near the UK. So, and that, but then all the way through that, seriously, walking through the Isles of Scilly, I was still very much thinking about that period of me feeling like this kind of little sea creature in it's never left me.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead.
That's wonderful. And I think it was me. I just wanted to say that they didn't know about the Grenada stint. And I was actually in Grenada and the same age as you at that time. So now I'm wondering which school you were kicked out of. But maybe we can talk about that in the after.
I can't remember what's the name, but if you said the name, I would remember. And I have friends from them, friends who could probably tell me, but it's the kind of thing I forget.
I was attending St. Joseph's Convent. I'm going to assume it was either St. Joseph's Convent or Westmoreland Secondary, which was a private school.
So then I think it must have been St. Joseph's Convent because there were nuns. And the nuns were there.
Right. Okay. So now I need to search my memory because we might have crossed paths at 11 years old.
It's a small place, The Caribbean is a small place too.
Small place. Oh, that is
Leone, I had you pegged for the kind of girl who would get kicked out of school.
I made memory of what happened. Now we know memory is complex, right?
It is.
Memory of what I think happened, whether or not I'm right is a whole other something. All I remember is that the day we were given some kind of class in which they were the nun was playing the piano, and then she was called away. And some other girl in the class knew how to play the piano, so she was playing the piano. And then I started teaching them Jamaican songs. And then it got a little bit bawdy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then one came back and she was vexed, which was fine. I thought it was appropriate for the nun to be vexed because we were being naughty. But then she tried to hit one of the other kids. And I thought that this was foolishness because it's me caused the problem. So when I said, no, it was me, she tried to lick me. And my mother don't run that. My mother was, you understand? So I don't respond very well to being hit. So then I tried to hit her back.
Oh yeah. That would get kicked out.
Okay.
That is my memory. The lady not come forward and say it's lie, but that's my memory. So then I think that conversation then took place with my
some research.
I don't know what happened with the conversation with my mother, but then it was like, you're not going back to school. I was like, okay. Beat you to
there. May I jump in here? That we're talking about body things.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that we're talking about body things, let's talk about your choice of the word pum pum. We're both Jamaican. We know that nice girls don't say that word. Certainly not nice middle class girls. I imagine somewhere in the country it might just be the normal word. But Houstonian girls like us are not supposed to say that word. Why did you choose that word? And we noticed too that you mentioned that you're quite fond of Anthony Winkler's writing. well, certainly the lunatic, and
Yes,
he kind of likes that word too. So I was wondering if there was any that influenced the choice of the word in any way.
Well, I mean, I think Winkler certainly gave me permission because we're all kind of, I think we're all of an age. So I certainly remember when the lunatic came out in Jamaica and started walking. What was special about Anthony Winkler's The Lunatic was, first of all, of course, it was in our vernacular, and we'd never seen such a thing unless it was Louise Bennett. Secondly, the fact that that thing passed its way around groups of teenagers who were traditionally not necessarily into literature, certainly not passing around books. I remember thinking how powerful. I mean, I already knew the power of books. I was brought up with people who love books, a house full of books. But I remember that summer of us, sharing The Lunatic, copies of The Lunatic on the bus. And I thought that Winkler was wonderfully brave. No apology. I mean, okay, you could get away with it maybe as a man, but for people who perhaps don't know, this is a book about a madman, which was already cutting through issues of class and appropriateness, and who used our language. No, now you have to also understand in context as well. I was not brought up in a traditionally middle-class Jamaican home, Paula, at all.
Okay.
My mother is more English than me. She was brought up in England. Right, she's the black parent. My father is the white parent. But my mother was born in Jamaica, but left when she was 6, and grew up in England. So is actually in many ways very British, and was a member of the Workers' Party of Jamaica. Was very leftist politics, very open sexual education for me, very liberal and very atheist background. So understand that I was not having to deal with and push through many of the, let's say, challenges of an average middle-class Jamaican girl.
Okay.
I was being backed by a lot of liberalism and a lot of, just for anything, a lot of make the picnic speak, she have a right to speak too. Which, now, of course, I was seeing all of the things that you refer to in my good friends, in their homes and so on. Conservatism, I go to church with my friend, blah, blah. But there was always, my family was always very alternative. So nobody in my house really minded the word pum pum. In fact, the tendency around the word pum pum to have an etymological conversation about the history of pum pum and where it come from and why it's a good word and why it's a word of the people and what does it rhyme with. That would have been more like conversation in mind.
Okay.
But why did I use the word? I tell you though, I thought of all kinds of things because I knew that physically, again, for people who don't know, in this book, people's vulvas, so not their vagina is a different thing. Their whole vulva comes free of their bodies. Now, of course, we know, if we know anything about biology and the body, is that, of course, the vagina cannot come free because the vagina is internal. So the whole vulva, including mons and clitoris and labia and everything has to come free all at the same time. And I didn't like the word vulva. Isn't that a pretty word? And I make lots of decisions based on sound and texture, right? And it's like vulva. No, I can't keep saying vulva. And then I was like, well, I know where I am, and I'm taking advantage of lots of different words from different countries and different Caribbean idiolects anyway. So I was like, no, pum pum is perfect because pum pum is everything. So if you say you want pum pum or you have pum pum, everybody understands that we're really talking about everything. So I was like, good, this is a good catch-all. It sounds good on the tongue. People are going to be vexed. Fabulous, that's the word.
Well chosen. I think it's a good thing.
Ladies, seriously, think about this for a minute. I have paused because, of course, most of the newspapers who have reviewed this book don't understand the implications of pum pum. So I have caused the Independent, the Guardian, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Black to all use the word pum pum. I am dead happy now.
Has it been interviewed by? Has the book been reviewed by any Jamaican publication? Because I'd be interested to see, for example, and a conservative newspaper like the Gleaner, I would love to see what they would do.
As far as I know, no.
Okay.
Which vexes me, but you know. Yeah. But they're probably also going to be boring and conservative about it, which would vex me more. So, but you know, sure, I think that would be still appropriate.
Right.
But I am not conservative, and I am used to being amused and irritated by the conservatism of our nation.
Let me jump in again.
Yes, I think
because you mentioned. Sorry, Francine, did you want to jump in?
No, right. It's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. Because you mentioned that you were not raised religious, your parents were in the WPJ, which means that you were pretty far left. You weren't just left; you were pretty far on the left spectrum.
Actually, for the non-Jamaicans, could you give us a bit of a picture of what that means?
The WPJ is the Workers' Party of Jamaica. It's a communist party. So that Leone was raised. I thought I was raised left, but honey, you were raised left. Yeah. So,
I expected the world to be taken over by the revolution any minute now, all the way through my childhood.
It makes sense that you were in Grenada and all of that. Now it all making sense.
Now it makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
my mother was an astonishing, unsung activist and journalist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. What's her name?
Joan Ross Frankson.
Oh, okay.
If you go back to Jamaica and say Joan Ross Frankson to people in, like, I'd say 60s, 70s bracket, they would all be like, oh yes, Leone is her picnic.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Right. No, you mentioned that, of course, you weren't raised religious, but the book, I interpret it as, in some ways, a defense of Black spirituality. In as much as you were not raised religious and you are not religious. I wondered why you thought that you needed to or should or this was something you wanted to do to defend Black spirituality.
Because it's us, no? Because it's us. And we have used, nobody who truly understands the history of the Caribbean can entirely diss or dismiss the church. And also our various interpretations of spirituality and our connections both with Africa, but also our hybrid religions. All of these have been ways we know to exist, to keep going, to create community, to offer succor to each other, to offer a philosophy that has kept us alive. So, I think what more than that, what I believe in, if I believe in anything, is the collective consciousness of people and how important it is for us to come together. I would like to think that this book is a showcase for that. In the end, the people of Poppy Show must make a choice about standing together, regardless of their differences. And whether or not we interpret that through our sense of what is greater than ourselves or a sense of spirit or God, or whether we see it as my mother did and I was brought up to, which is a sense of revolution and change. The point is all come together to shift that, to make change. Now, more than at any other time in my life, I feel that these ideas are important because we're all kind of, there's a huge generalization, but it feels to me like a lot of people have gone individual. And that individualism, which of course is supported by capitalism, is mashing us up. We don't know how to change things. We don't trust government. We're sick of government, both in the Caribbean and in Europe, saying the same things again, promising the same things again. We feel like we can't change anything. And yet the only answer, it seems to me, to that is for groups of people to come together and show their might and their power. And that is something that I think is a viable way of existing, both within church, both within spirit, and both within politics, in political movements. So, yeah, and I think that how could I tell a story of the Caribbean without a sense of what is greater than ourselves? I don't think that's possible to do. So, the WPJ might have not wanted to spend very much time on you know, in the 80s, perhaps saying, you know, religion is the opium of the people, if you dash with that. I don't think that's possible. We came too far. You know, our sense of God or the spirits or the ancestors was part of keeping us alive.
I definitely think, if I may jump in, sorry.
Please do.
Yeah.
Complicated, and I have all kinds of different feelings about them, and I'm open to all kinds of different interpretations.
No. I completely agree. I think if we look at the history of Black radicalism, not only in the Caribbean, I would say, but globally, far more often than we kind of sometimes give credit for, and I don't know if that's fair, but I would say that our kind of mass movements are led by spiritual leaders rather than necessarily political leaders. And I think that speaks to what you're saying.
I mean, it's clear to me that also I'm taking, of course, in the book, I'm taking the piss out of traditional religion. So that you know, when Christianity in its worst form tries to push its head up out off the pulpit, you know, I'm characterizing it as not only homophobic and, you know, anti-woman and problematic. Yeah, there's no question. Organized, you know, white people religion, I'm not interested in and don't have very much support for. But our interpretations, I think, have merit. I mean, who the hell am I to say? But I see it. Because let me actually put that differently. Our interpretations of God drive so much of who we are. And for me to push that away and disrespect that is ridiculous to me.
No, that makes sense. The reason I jumped on it, I think, is because I think we talked right at the beginning about one of the major themes, I think, of your novel being love. And one of the things that really struck us was the way that love was very clearly interpreted as not something necessarily restricted or confined in your vision to something that happens between a heterosexual romantic couple. It was very clear that there's a real tenderness between Xavier and his niece Sontine, between Sontine and her brother. And then there's this like terrible character, villain, Governor Intisar, who, is so devoted to his daughter that a lot of the kind of story is driven by the result of that, without giving too much away. And they're all examples really of just a deep, enduring, like redemptive love that is most clearly non-romantic, which is healthy. So I guess you've kind of asked the question why it's important to depict a variety of love in relationships. But I guess I could say you're also kind of in the novel, I think, quite skeptical about marriage. And yet the kind of climax of the novel or the push of the novel is towards this wedding day of this young couple who is sincerely and devoted to each other. And it's quite a beautiful and sweet relationship. And so what do we then make of your skepticism, given that you've got this clear commitment to love in its myriad varied forms that are kind of healthy and empowering and wonderful? You've got this kind of wedding. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No.
Questions answered.
Such a lovely question. Thank you. I suppose it's something to do with the fact that it's not that I'm anti-marriage. I'm just anti-bad marriage. So, and I think marriage, now I would say this, I have never been married. So, of course, some of this is watching and listening to other people. I think that the characters here who have married, they married the wrong person for the wrong reasons. Xavier married Nia, bless her, because Nia wanted him to. And to me, Nia is that permanent side chick who should have remained a side chick, who is a permanent, friend with benefits, who should have remained in that place. And Xavier, bless him, I wish had had the courage of his convictions to not give her what he thought she wanted, to be the good man, but actually say no. So they're in a relationship, a marriage for the wrong reason, which is guilt. And for her, I know, okay, she loves Xavier, but also she needs him. I love Nia. I love all of my characters, but Nia, to me, is me trying to suggest actually there are many mental health issues here going on. Nia shouldn't have married Xavier. Nia needed therapy.
Is she also marrying because she wants? From Nia to the picture, because they're quite young when they marry, and she feels like she wants the wedding. She wants to be able to tell her friends that she got the dress and the guy. There's a picture of that as well.
Mostly she wants Xavier, and you know what? Because let's dig down into this now. So she wants Xavier because she'd been sleeping with Xavier since they were like 16. And she's always kind of been the not important one. He's always gone off with someone else. But his interpretation has been, we just have fun when we see each other, right? Okay. So, you've ex? I didn't know. So it takes him ages and ages to work out that she's actually in love with him. Now, so my suggestion here is we really dig down deep, is that she has been affected by a value, a judgment call, which says, if I am with a man and I sleep with him habitually, that has to be love. It has to be marriage. It has to be permanent for it to be okay. It couldn't be that it just sweet me.
And then you had the old aunties who were judging her, who were being very judgy.
Yes, nobody's judging Xavier.
Yeah, but they're judging her because they call her fast or something like that. Can't remember what word it was.
Yeah, force right.
Yeah, that night, force right. Right. So I am seeing now that you're speaking
there is no space. Because there is no space still created for us as women to, in the same way one might say, I mean, I'm being deliberately facetious here. One might say, I enjoy netball and it is good for my body. And when I do it, I feel wonderful afterwards. There's no space for, because if you remember, I don't expect none of any of you to remember, but there's a point when we first meet Nia. Nia just feel nice in the sex.
I remember that.
In the sex. You know, it was nice to her. And he's kind of a bit taken aback because he's also been told explicitly and implicitly that girls don't, what do you do with a girl like this, right? Yeah. What do you do with this kind of girl?
Yeah.
And what happens to her, for me, the suggestion is over time, of course she loves Xavier, but there's also an expectation on her that all of these years of having sex with Xavier would have no value if they didn't love and then marry.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so we find ourselves in that position. And that's not a good marriage because that's too much shoulda, coulda, woulda, have to, you know? And then for Xavier, for Anise now, who's the other main character who is married and in a bad marriage, well, we can maybe more explicitly see this. Anise got tired of offending and irritating her traditional parents. She push against them. She push against them. She don't want to be who they are. She was very attracted to spirituality rather than her pastor father's religion. So, she pushing against all of her teenage years. And then, she don't have no man. But again, look at this. These limited ideas of who we should be, particularly as women. Eventually she gives in to, all right, let me be a good girl for once and get married to what seems to be a good man. But she never loved
that daddy bring for me.
That daddy bring. Exactly. But she never loved him. So then they make life and they do their best, right? But her husband is backward in his own way. And I mean, I think all of you have love for him, right? Dandu? Not Dandu, sorry.
Tantan.
Tantan.
And I vex that you changed his name from David to Joseph. David is a good name.
Well, I want to tell you that let's just say that reminds me of somebody.
The name reminds you of somebody. It's good people it reminds you of.
Reminds me of somebody. And so therefore I thought maybe I should, change it. But yes, so then they find themselves in a position where they're in a good enough marriage, but he doesn't see her. Really understand what she's doing with the healing. And what about the thing about Tantan that irritates me is Tantan has decided how things is going to go. So because his wife keeps having essentially stillbirths, he decides, well, then we're going to be celibate. He doesn't have a conversation with her about it. He's going to be a good man, and a good man already would make a sacrifice. Imagine me as a good man not going to sex off my wife, and I'm not going to cheat on her. I'm going to be a good man. And he thinks he's made this huge sacrifice without even having a conversation with his wife about the implications of this, because he just thinks, and we've all met men like this, right? I'm not cussing the men, but we've met men like this who are just like, yeah, there's no point. I mean, I remember meeting a man when I was about 18, one of my first and most important boyfriends in my life. And me goes, well, let's talk about blah, blah, blah. And he's like, why? It's this way, and that's the way. And so I can feel that part of Tantan going on. And so they have this relationship in which they're not really communicating. So I guess what I'm saying is this. And I'm saying this with Santine and, of course, Dandu, who are the sweet young couple who we all kind of love. And I'm glad you love them. I want you to love them. Because for me, here we have the potential for something real for a marriage. And by marriage, I just mean a permanence and a promising to each other to try to be together forever and to hold to each other that will work because they're friends. And because they talk to each other eventually, because of course they were going the wrong way to each other. I had to bring them together. I won't give away the thing, but I had to bring them together at a point where lots has happened to her and because they have to talk before they marry. They have to know what they are marrying in each other. And she has various experiences in this book in which him can look upon her and go, all right, I see you. I see what I'm marrying. What I'm marrying is not an idea in my head. Now, it may seem all very rich. I'm sitting here with my unmarried self, giving people talking about that. Because I've had such an appalling love life, I know it when I see it. And
I think you can.
Sorry, darling. It's a very, very long. You can never cut me up. There's a very long way of me saying I'm not anti-marriage. I'm concerned by bad marriages. I'm concerned by bad relationships.
But I think that's clear in the novel, though, that you have, like you say, you give time to the young couple that really genuinely cares about each other, that are excited about each other, that are good to each other. And I think that also applies to, I'm going to get their names wrong. I'm sorry. But Governor Intisar's son and Pilar.
Yeah. Romanza and Pilar.
Right.
Yeah, two gay men. Yeah.
You know,
who relationshipy.
Yeah, and they see each other from the instant, and it's like in that first meeting they see each other, and there's something that they see each other, and there's just no beef after that. You know, they
also speak the truth to each other, so that's really important as well. So you know, Romanza's asking questions, and he's giving the answer to the questions, and that is the way they run that between them for all of their relationship. They're always.
Is there a cop out there though? Because like Romanza can always say if you're lying. Yeah.
Oh, of course.
So there's an obligation to truth in their relationship that there isn't in others.
Yeah. But in allegorical, no, of course they've got an advantage, right? Advantage. I suppose what maybe I'm trying to say is, and imagine if you did that with someone who knew when you were lying. Now, how else would you yourself?
Right. Yes.
I think the thing to remember as well is that I have all kinds of ideas and strong ideas about things, but underneath everything, I'm constantly teasing. I'm constantly going, really? And what? And what would happen if? So there's a kind of constant sense of mischief throughout the whole thing. And if you buck up any question that feels... Sorry, go. What?
We saw the mischief.
I suppose in my fantasies, if my readers hit any levels of discomfort or even like inconsistency or wait, hold on, I don't understand why, that you stop and you know that underneath all of it, I'm having a laugh. I'm teasing you. I'm teasing you, the reader, and I'm teasing everybody.
I'm going to jump in here on that.
I'm just saying, if challenged by any particular idea, stop and smile, because that's usually what I've been doing.
Nice. Thank you.
So I'm going to jump in here because I'm really glad that you said that, because there were some people we know who were quite uncomfortable with the theme, basically uncomfortable with the fact that you used magical realism. And so that's one of the things we wanted to ask. Basically, why did you choose magical realism as the genre, the underlying theme for the book? Maybe knowing that it would make people uncomfortable?
No, I think that last, I assume that I'm going to make people uncomfortable, particularly conservative people, because that's what's happened all my life. So I kind of don't pay attention to that really. Magic realism, because that felt like a very personal journey for me. I'd written 2 novels in rapid succession in the 90s, which were mostly realism. You know, got my political chops out, expressed my feminism, expressed my race politics, you know, expressed my attitude towards sexual violence. I was writing about quite serious issues in a very real, in lots of realism, and yet loving everything from Toni Morrison to Gabriel Garcia Marquez to Anthony Winkler to Stephen King and I think because the book took so long to write, I had a long opportunity to sit down and go, what pleases you? And to what extent, even though you seem like you're being so free in some ways, to what extent are you shoulding yourself? Because every upbringing brings its shoulds. Every upbringing. So yes, atheist, communist, background, liberal, arty-farty parent, sure. And still shoulds. You should, you should work for a collective. You should express your politics. You should be a good feminist. You should, these unconscious ideas come through to me as well. And I began to realize that I was being like anyone else. I had to look at the shoulds. And so I kept thinking, you love magic realism and you love horror and you love erotica and you love all of these genre-based disciplines. Why are you not writing from this space? And I gave myself permission. And then it seemed perfect anyway as a genre to express the Caribbean. Like now it seems to me, how could you express the Caribbean in any other way? It's like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, so, at the beginning, at the beginning of the of our discussion, you said that we just, your granny talk. For example, I will tell you, my granny used to talk to the the big moths that in Jamaica that we call bats. Because in Jamaica, just to give you the non-Jamaican background, in Jamaica, a big moth, they would be like as big, about this big, and they're the spirits of your ancestors or the recently departed. It could be just a remote ancestor or the recently departed. When they come into your house, it's a family member coming to visit. And my grandmother used to just sit down and have a conversation. She always knew who it was. And she would have a conversation with, and we call them bats, we don't call them moths. And she'd tell them who get married, who graduate from school. And that was just normal. And I mean, we would giggle. But to her, that's just normal. You tell the bat, what's happening in the family because he's a family member.
Of course.
So
absolutely. Yeah. And I chose, and that story, Paula, is exactly why I chose Moths and Butterflies for this book. Exactly. That experience.
Awesome. That's wonderful. Yeah, we did have on other occasions discussions about, the magical realism and why it was used, and some people being uncomfortable with it and not understanding it, and I mean, my personal opinion is that the Caribbean is the perfect place. I mean, our lives are lives of magical realism. We live with so much absurdity and so many, and all the comical things that happen that, like you said earlier, Leone, everything is a joke, and we make jokes about it, and so
I agree with you. I think that magic realism is tremendously powerful, and this is the reason. So you're walking along the street and then suddenly your feet start to melt into the pavement and then runway and gone and start playing Adisan, right? And of course in magic realism we don't jump up and go, oh my God, my feet, oh Lord, what to do?
Right.
We don't do that. We just accept that the feet have run off and we continue without the feet, or we watch the feet as they disappear, or we run, go tell our husband, so the husband can help us get back the feet. Now, any of those reactions, because the reaction is not to go, oh dear, that's impossible, I'm going crazy, I might have taken drugs, what has happened? That is not a magical realism response. That might be a fantasy response or a realism response. But in magic realism, we accept that the feet have gone. We go home and we tell our husband, say, what happened to your feet? Him said the feet run away, He said, let me come try to save it for you. Now, if you have a husband who will come and look for the feet in the ocean with you, that's one kind of love. If you have a husband who be like, me did a long time, want fling with the feet, say should have fling with the feet long time. That's another one, and etc. So magic realism and our reaction to the extraordinary is a chance to amplify ideas, underscore ideas, begin to bring up ideas that can be so huge and emotional and painful it's not a most powerful way to see them within realism. When I say to you, when all of these women's pum pum come loose and we all laugh, and that's the first thing we do, then I want you to ask some serious questions of yourself too. If your pum pum come loose, what are you going to do?
Oh, me know
what have, and how will you react to your own body? And when you look at this part of your body, who will you be? And when the people in your life see that you have maybe dashed away a pum pum and they don't like you anymore and they don't value anymore, what does that mean about the society? And if all of the women went, we don't care about the pum pums, and locked them in a zoo somewhere, and somehow women no longer had vulvas, who would we then be in our society? Would we be more powerful, less powerful? Would men treat us differently now that we were free of pum pum? So like, it brings up 1,000 different important questions, and only magical realism can do that, can truly begin to push us in to serious conversations through the laughter and the oddness.
Absolutely. I want to jump in, if I may, Francine and Paula, because we've talked a lot about magical realism, but not what we're actually talking about. In your novel, core is one of the, do you say core or cause actually?
I say cause, yeah.
Cause. Is kind of the source of a lot of the magic. And I'm dying to ask this question, and I refuse to end this without doing it. Did you start with your cause, or did you start with the characters when you were putting them together?
Both.
Do tell.
Sometimes it would be that the character come to me because I want to talk about stillbirth, for example, and then I'm like, okay, but actually can't have ordinary stillbirth because that's not exciting or interesting enough. So therefore, we'd have watery children pass through her and sink into the floorboards. So then that's probably that. And sometimes, I would just think, oh, that's really amusing, as an interesting idea. So now I can create a character around, if you had that kind of magic, if you had that kind of course, then who would you be? So it varied. And a lot of it was me ripping off the animal kingdom. Not all of it, but a lot of it. Because I love animals, and it's one of the things that's not as evident in this book. It's one of the things I kind of had to leave out, but I love animals, and animals do very, very weird and extraordinary things with their bodies. Things that we would look at and think, oh, that's impossible. It's not impossible in the animal kingdom. So I had a lot of kind of like the minor cores. If you go through, some of them are from the animal kingdom, because I'm not like this unending imaginative person. I'd be like, oh God, I need another chorus. All right, I've run out of things. I can't think of anything else. Let me go. And I would literally be Googling weird things that animals do and be like, oh, you turn yourself inside out. That is so wicked. Good.
Are there any that you wanted to include that didn't make it into the final novel?
A million billion. Like, it could have just been a book which would have just been a list of people's scores and just nothing else, but then there would be no story. And
are there any that you're like, oh no, if there's a sequel or a fan fiction that picks that up, I might just tell them about this one. It hurts. I wish I'd somehow managed, but it just didn't work and I had to leave it out.
The turning inside out actually is one, because you think of the implications of that. To truly turn yourself inside out, then everyone would have to have a relationship with your liver and your kidneys and your digestive system rather than what you look like. And I think you could do a million billion.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Because I'm actually starting just this week. I started a new book. And I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to jinx it. But it is. I'm having another opportunity, I think, to talk again about how stupid we are to be paying any attention to the way that we all look. How there's just far too much.
All right. May I jump in here? Because I did want to speak to you about.
Yes, go Paula.
Yeah. This One Sky Day, I think it subverts notions of beauty that we inherited from our colonial past and that we are absorbing from American TV. It's the beautiful women in This One Sky Day are dark-skinned, they're fat, they're plump, all the things that our colonizers told us were not beautiful. In fact, all the things that we are, what our colonizers told us are not beautiful. And I was wondering, first of all, you say that you don't approach your writing from, this is my political agenda, I am going to put it forward. So tell me what motivated that.
I think that you're absolutely right, of course, that I don't start in that place. But of course, eventually things come up in the edit. I think one becomes more conscious of what your intentions are, what you're going to do with the things that are bubbling up. And it became fast important to me over the years to explicitly make women look more realistic in this book. It was suddenly so important to me because I realized my first 2 books, and my auntie made this point to me. She probably doesn't even remember. She said, yes, I noticed that all of your characters are slender and beautiful.
Oh, wow.
I thought, oh, I didn't even notice. Black, of course, all of my characters are black, and that already felt like, pushing against some people's expectations. But I hadn't noticed. I was making them all socially acceptably Western beauty. I thought, oh, I can't do that. I'm not that. How can I do that? And so, but that took some courage, you hear, Paula, because there are lots of things in this life I'm brave about. But over these years, my primary wound has been years of eating disorder and body dysmorphia, which is something that a lot of people say doesn't happen in the Caribbean. But listen, I learned how to be bulimic in middle-class bathrooms across Jamaica where other people are vomiting too. You understand?
Right.
So whether it is that we got it from the West or not, it's there, right? And research shows us, is not a lot of research been done in the Caribbean about eating disorders, but certainly initial research shows us that eating disorders take place in people of all backgrounds across the world, regardless. So this idea that, no, man, if you're fat and you're brown in Jamaica, you're ruling on. No, I was being told when I was 10 that I was too fat. So, and that there was something wrong with me. And so I think, and that thing when you come back, I think I've heard a lot of people say this, thinking about coming back to the Caribbean from the diaspora, one of the primary things you're going to hear is, 1, you're married, so you're not married yet. And what a way you get fat. Or what a way
you get fat can be a compliment, though,
I know, but and in some cases was, but often wasn't. And I knew the difference when I was 10. But also not just fat, also you get margadoni, or what a way your face with a pimple. Lord, you go there, you make people mash. I was just like, I have become increasingly angry about that part of the toxicity of our relationships with each other, right? And so, so back to the question, of course, I absolutely wanted, and this has now become something that I am clear on and is an agenda, and I'm going to approach all of my writing this way. I want a whole varieties of bodies. I want older bodies. I want people who, when you have sex, it drop out and you have to start again. I want bodies that are in pain. I want bodies with diabetes. I want fat bodies that are running down the street with efficiency. You know what I mean? I want tall bodies that are so mager that you can't sit them when they're sideways. And those being celebrated too. So I'm not just talking about fat bodies. I'm talking about a whole variety of bodies, right?
Right.
I want bodies that are going through perimenopause, and I want bodies that are going through puberty. And I want bodies in which, penises are too large and too small and in between. I want all of it. And that has become an agenda for me. Because I am sick of this idea that we have to look a certain way to be beautiful. And in fact, I'm sick of this idea that beauty is important at all. And that we actually shouldn't be concerned with the ways our bodies are doing their work for us. Is our digestive system working? Can we run down the road? Is our skin healthy? Is our heart working? I am increasingly frustrated, as you can hear, that we should be, as women, so concerned about what we look like.
That actually reminds me a little bit of, I guess we'll call her your contemporary, Monique Rothery's novel, The Mermaid of Black Conch, where she's very conscious in the beginning, or clear in the beginning, that the main character, the woman, she's plain, actually. She's not attractive, and she smells
like Arawak woman. Yes, I know. Yes, yeah. I agree, and I know that that's one of Monique's concerns. She was very concerned that, of course, our traditional or certainly westernized idea of a mermaid is, the long locks and the blonde and the whatever and the perfect, and she really had to push against and subvert that idea. Yeah.
And she does. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, ladies, we've just about run out of time, but maybe we can do like one really super quick question each. If you have a super quick question, is it possible? A super quick question?
I have a super quick question.
Give me quick, and then I'll go quick. Yeah.
Okay, quick question.
Okay, so my super quick question is: do you have a favorite character among the residents of Puppy Show?
Savior. His big heart and all of the things
Me
that
too.
he's wrong. Yeah. He means well, and I love him.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Kasua?
I've just changed my quick question. Can I have two really quick questions? Like super
You can
quick
have
questions?
mine, Kasua. Go
Oh,
ahead.
thank you. Okay, that gives me. I'm now gonna take three because I don't take liberties. Quick question one. Usain Bolt, what did he ever do to you? He is absolutely the inspiration for this
I'll answer it quick because it's yes, as you saying, and I love that you get the joke. I'm telling you, when we see you get the joke, I laugh a lot, but I was so happy that you got that joke, right? One of the characters you say never do me nothing here. Let me tell you who is a combination of Usain and Saga. Which Saga is the Prime Minister of Jamaica.
Paula called that. Yeah, Paula did call that.
Yeah, Paula said that. Yeah.
Second question. Very quick.
I'm so glad you saw it. That's so cool.
Although, okay, this is not that quick, but I'm going to ask you anyway. There is grief, pain, and villainy in Poppy Show, but none of the characters are irredeemable. Why is that so important?
Because nobody is irredeemable except Trump. Nobody is irredeemable.
Thank you. And Mitzi and Nia. They're never, ever in any other world supposed to be friends, but they have this beautiful love each other being it's the wife and the mistress. They're not supposed to be friends. They're not supposed to help each other. They're not supposed to support each other. That's not how this goes, but it does in Poppy Show. Like, why?
Because we should. And then a woman, is that thing where the man has an affair and then you go to the woman's house? Foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
Foolishness here, right?
Because it's a sisterhood.
Absolutely. And I think underneath all of this, Anise for me is the character who actually reminds us as women, friendship is important, more necessary than anything. You could have. You see, the thing is this: Anise now has. It doesn't give away much that she ends up with who she should end up with, right? And I think that she must never again forget her girlfriends. Never again should she forget what it is to sit under a mango tree and look at women and look in their faces. Friendship is deeply important.
Leone, before we leave, I just want to tell you that something nobody except a Jamaican would get that I loved in the book was the high heel accent like this.
Yes, absolutely, darling.
I so love the fact that you put
the high heel accent. Absolutely, and you have to get higher.
Yes, of course. Me and my auntie that used to talk like that.
Absolutely, darling. I mean, I wish I can talk like that too, but I try not to.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you. It's been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with writing the new book.
Thank you. I need it.
Love you, Leone.
Looking forward to it.
Oh, all the love in the world to all of you. Believe me, ladies, in a way that you can't imagine, you have fortified me for this next book. To be all writers want to be understood. You understood this book. I am deeply touched by your emotional connections to it. Thank you.
Oh,
I am.